This week on Supercars Talk, we've got some wet and wild racing to cover. So, finally we had some racing over the weekend. It wasn't actually that long an off-season when you think about it, but it still felt like forever. But first off, we need to cover off the big news this week. Ryan Walkinshaw and Stephen Grove have been announced as the new team representatives on the Supercars board. I think this, maybe they're not the best operators out there at the moment. They still have a little bit to prove. But I actually think this is quite a good step for the category. In Ryan, you've got someone with a younger kind of perspective. Not saying the other guys are too old or anything, but at least he's got that kind of younger viewpoint. And in Stephen Grove, you've got someone kind of coming in with a fresh set of eyes, not someone who's been doing this for many, many, many years. So I think that's a good idea, getting someone a little bit different on the board, because I think in the past there's been a little bit of self-interest in there. Hopefully these guys don't kind of go down that path, but at least it is a bit fresh. The actual big news coming into the weekend, though, Triple Eight is taking the Groves to court over David Couchy starting work with them early. So anyway, this gardening leave thing comes up, and a lot of people don't seem to understand it on the internet. So basically, it's not like Triple Eight makes people go and do their garden. It's called gardening leave because you've got nothing else to do, so you go and do the gardening. It's a bit of a joke term. So what happens is essentially, like, these guys, you're in a high technical job. So say in my position, I think I need to give 6 weeks notice if I want to change my current job. So I hand in my notice, and, I'll probably continue working for 6 weeks because, my position's not that important. But there is certain people in my company I know, they have longer notice periods they have to give. It could be, say, 3 months, and they hand in their notice and they're going to get told, thanks very much, out the door you go. We'll continue to pay you for the next 3 months, but you cannot go and start your new job because you're still employed, you're in your notice period. So that's the gardening leave thing, essentially. Like, Couchy's, handed in his notice, and then he's, 6 months notice he would have had to have given, which that gives the team a chance to, and I think the grey area on this kind of came in with when he handed in his notice and then when he actually finished work with them, because I was very surprised that he didn't, straight away go off and, tend to his garden. He continued working with Triple Eight till the end of the year. So it probably has served, from the point of him handing in his notice and the point of him starting with the Groves, probably has been 6 months. And I have heard that he stopped being paid by Triple Eight at the end of last season. So if they're not paying him, well, they're not holding up their end of the bargain, so he can go and work with Groves. It'll be interesting to see, what's the truth and what's the rumour and where it all falls out. I think it's probably going to end up being a bit of a storm in a teacup. A couple of dollars kind of goes either way or whatever, or, maybe Triple Eight are just trying to, unstabilise them a little bit because they've stolen, one of their important assets. Now, there was lots of racing to cover over the weekend. I'll do a very quick Super 2 review because there's a lot to cover for the main game. So, race 1, Everingham, he was doing a brilliant job. He looked like he had that settled. He was out cruising. And then he had that flat tyre during that safety car period and just, sunk like a stone. Robotham appeared to come just from nowhere on that restart, bang into the lead, and off he went. That was a brilliant win. Race 2, with the wet, just very, very chaotic. Best ended up taking out the win. Max Payne was in second, but that race, it was a bit of a lottery because of the weather. very hard to get a true kind of idea of where everyone is at this year. But there were a couple of guys who the weather and that played a big part. But yeah, there were a couple of guys who I was surprised where they were, and a couple of guys who surprised me a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the year. But yeah, you really can't take a true form guide off this weekend from it. Race 1 and qualifying. Let's look at the ones that the problem children rather than the ones who did well. Percat, 14th. Waters, 22nd. And some people will be very surprised by this one. I probably wasn't that, but I was a bit surprised at, Holdsworth, 23rd. I wasn't expecting, even Lee's talking about top 10. And I was not expecting top 10. I wasn't expecting 23rd, but then, he was right behind Waters. So, top 10 shootouts again. Why? It fills in the day a bit, but it's filling in the day. I'd probably prefer to see just a qualifying and 2 sprint races. I might even prefer that, 60-60 kind of split rubbish that we had the other year rather than a top 10. And anyway, enough complaining about that. Jaime and Reynolds, they opted to use the Super Soft right off the start. I was actually thought Reynolds was doing quite well and then realised he was on the Super Soft. I was a bit surprised. There wasn't that much of a difference between, and at first I thought, expected Jaime to just kind of blast away, and I thought, oh no, he's doing, like a real kind of calm and collected strategy on this to make them last longer. But there just didn't seem to be that big a delta between the soft and the super soft over the weekend. That's something because the super soft was supposed to be a lot faster. They weren't. Could it be with the circuit and the conditions? But that is something that they're going to have to take into account in future rounds when they have it. Jaime was looking really good, then ran out of fuel. They're saying they must have had a leak or something because they definitely put in enough fuel, but is it like a Team 18 kind of basic error, or was it something genuine? And Reynolds had an oil cooler failure during the race, so it was a bit hard to tell with that strategy whether it would have actually played out for them, because both of them were looking pretty good. Towards the end of the race, they obviously weren't going to win, but they were looking all right. People who weren't looking all right, Scott Pye, first retirement of the year. Did they just fit the same power steering rack that failed at Bathurst? They say it's different, but I mean, power steering failures again. I'm lost for words. We have similar things at work where, that we have the same problem again and again. And you think but also it's a lot bigger company and, we're not racing cars. What do you do? Will Davison came out. He actually looked a little bit aggressive this weekend, especially when he came out of the pits and he was right behind Jaime and then dive bombed him into turn 2. Kind of caught Jaime napping. And that's, that's kind of the Will Davison that we saw back in, 07, 08, 09, especially that first year when he was with HRT. Is Will Davison back? And then, of course, we were all sat there, it looked great at night, We got this promise of rain to mix things up. The rain didn't come on Saturday. Obviously, it came for Sunday. We were just kind of waiting for the rain. And these really, really long races at Sydney Motorsport Park, I really like the long races, but are they a little bit too long with this track? The field spread is huge. And then it was a little bit hard to follow, who'd had a short first stop and who'd had a long first stop and who was on a 3 stop and a 2. maybe we could do a bit more with the graphics. I mean, Larko cuts to that thing where it shows how much fuel everyone's got. Like, they've got the technology. Could we incorporate that maybe somehow so it's a bit easier to read the race? I'd had a long day. It was getting late at night. I fell asleep for a couple of laps, and it's just a little bit hard to pick exactly where everybody was, because some people seem to be doing work, and then all of a sudden the pits are, they had a really long first stop and things like that. So anyway, in the end, the more things changed, the more things stayed the same. Shane van Gisbergen had another win. Anton and Chaz were the other guys on the podium. So other than, Waters, who just had a very Tickford kind of weekend, the main guys that we expected for the championship fight were there on the podium in round one. No surprises. Race 2 on Sunday, and we'll look at the qualifying disappointments again. Shane van Gisbergen, 21st. Fully expected him to race through and win the race from that position because of, what he normally does, and it was changeable conditions. He didn't quite make it, but he got pretty close in the end. Will Brown, 23rd. Your teammate got pole as well. So that was Nick Percat, 25th. Nick, you disappointed me in both qualifying sessions. Brody, first pole of the year. We're kind of expecting these things from the Erebus boys now. They're just going from strength to strength, and that team seems to be getting better and better. It was mixed conditions in that top 10 shootout, but he did have to do it. And maybe this is, a way of spicing up the top 10 shootouts a bit, because I was paying attention to the whole session on that one, whereas I have to admit the day before it was a little bit of a, long trying kind of thing. So the start of race 2, there was a little bit of action. Brody started on the super softs and got a shocking start. Anton just off he went. So Brody's start looked a lot worse than it was, but kind of when you looked at the guys on the second row, Anton just left him for dead. Coming into turn 2, Courtney decided that instead of actually using my brakes, I'll use Will Davison. Worked quite well because he made up the position. And then Reynolds and Macaulay Jones decided to try and flip each other over and whatever, and both of them ripped a tyre off the car. And their days were kind of shafted after that. The rain started coming down on lap 7, and Shane van Gisbergen did a very un-Shane van Gisbergen thing and actually spun off in the wet. How could that possibly happen? And then, of course, he does it on the last turn, gets out of the grass somehow, which no one else has been able to manage all weekend, and then goes into pit lane, and you're like, okay, the rain's going to just come down now, and he's on his wets, and he's just going to blaze everyone and win this thing by like 3 laps, pretty much a normal kind of race. It's all going to fall into his lap, and it actually didn't. I think it was about lap 15, he ended up having to come back in for slicks because it was just going backwards. You could see that he was starting to unravel a bit with Andrew Edwards on the radio, like, why have we done this, blah, blah, blah. It was all right by the end of the day because he came back to 6th after some safety cars and it all caught up. But just at that point, you can see there's just a little bit of, what's this guy doing? Normally I've got the strategy to dominate everyone, and this isn't the Triple Eight plan. We just go out and win everything. We finally got to see a safety car this weekend with the mixed conditions and what the grass was like and that. It was surprising they got this far into the weekend without having one. Why the safety car came out? Because Jake Kostecki decided to start driving around the track the wrong way. This isn't like Destruction Derby or whatever, on the PlayStation 1 or whatever. He couldn't flick spin it or something, and then he stalled it. But it was just comical, like watching him try and go the wrong way around the track. Yes. After the safety car for the Percat and Pie incident, which both of them's fault, really. Chaz, super aggressive on that restart, diving down the inside of Anton, and that probably set him up for the win, taking that position there and then, because, well, he had the track position after that. Now, this is the MSR report for the weekend. It feels like. Jack LeBrock decided to get himself a bad sportsmanship penalty for his battle with Feeney. Was there a little bit of Triple Eight favouritism in that? I don't think it looked that bad, but yeah. If it was me, I would have probably ingled him and, showed I'm here, I'm not going to put up with any crap. Apparently, there's a lot of, rubbing and whatever going on, and then, LeBrock was a bit like, show this little whippersnapper and whatever. But yeah, if I was Feeney, I would have just, cleaned him up. And if you get a penalty, who cares? It's your first year. You're not going for the championship. Whatever, just go for it. And then LeBrock starts pissing down. Everybody else changes to wets, and they decided to stay out on the slicks. Now, there was a few laps in there where I thought, these guys are geniuses. They could, they could win this from everybody. This is the brilliant strategy. And then it all took Lando Norris on them. The rain came down a bit hard, and he just kind of aquaplaned straight off the track, and it was all over. But for a fleeting moment there, they looked like absolute geniuses. Once again, it's, my opinion, why not go for it? They're not in the championship hunt. If they end up finishing 17th instead of 16th at the end of the year, it's not the end of the world. But, you've got a lot of TV time. Those cars are great as well. But, you kind of rolled the dice and went for it. This is something that I expect from Brad Jones Racing, which they don't. They really seem to have lost their way on those kind of wacky strategy calls. So it's good to see someone having a go at things like that these days, because most of them just play ultra conservative all the time. Now, the other part of the MSR report, Todd Hazelwood decides to do a bit of Days of Thunder on Winterbottom after the race. So the nice story, I suppose, is that they were side by side. He aquaplaned and kind of went off at turn one. But the better story is Frosty really annoyed him, and he just took him out deliberately. And Frosty's not happy about it. I wouldn't stress too much, Todd, because if you've decided to pick on someone in the field, Frosty is probably an easy, because what's he going to do? He's going to get all grumpy and say a lot of things, and he's not going to take you out or anything like that. He's more likely to give you a cuddle than really, any retribution for doing a move like that. So I was trying to figure out that, at first you look at the camera and you're like, but they're down in the results, and then how are they still in the results? It happened after the finish. So full Days of Thunder marks for that one. So at the end of the day, Chaz Mostert out, he went and won. Brody Kostecki and Anton finished out the podium. Championship points. Now this is the big one. Chaz Mostert is leading the championship for the first time in his career. Anton is second, only 12 points behind. Shane Van Gisbergen in third, 27. Behind, we've got Brody Kostecki, Will Davison. Cam Waters is somehow in sixth in the championship after that weekend. Will Brown, Jaime, Slade, and then Feeney actually in the top 10. Well done, Brock Feeney. 2 top 10s. You get my impressive driver of the weekend. I said we'd get, flashes of brilliance and then, lows. He started off, pretty well. He made both top 10 shootouts. He finished 9th and 11th in the 2 races. Just overall, Of course, we expect more out of a Triple Eight car. We're expecting, wins and podiums and that. But really, considering the changeable conditions all weekend and that, he did pretty well. He's coming out of the weekend in the top 10 of the championship. I was expecting less from him this weekend. My disappointment of the weekend, Nick Percat. I was expecting more. Especially starting off at SMP, considering what Chaz did in the car, I was just expecting more, Nick. Qualifying probably set up your weekend. It was a really good run in race one. Ended up being sixth in the race. Quite good. But imagine if you didn't have to fight back from that poor qualifying. And then also in race two, you might not have been with, the power steering super team down the back there battling kind of thing. So, get the qualifying up to speed. Should be doing a lot better. Too early to tell, Jaime. Now, BJR have a bit of a thing at Sydney Motorsport Park where it's been a very happy hunting ground for that number 8 car. Can't say that, about the rest of the team, but those Percat seem to have been dialed in quite well there recently. So Jaime's results, he looked pretty good all weekend, but is that going to be an SMP thing? The true test is probably when they get to Tasmania, whether this is true form from them or whether it's just, Brad Jones at Sydney Motorsport Park. So that's it for my review of Sydney Motorsport Park. I think I've been talking for probably far too long, so well done for listening this much. Down in the comments, let me know what you thought of the weekend. Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the long races, or would you, maybe prefer... I like the one long race and maybe then having a more sprint kind of thing on the Saturday, have a big long race on the Sunday. That's just my opinion, but until next time, I'm still Dave and I'll catch you later.